I'm Damien Valentine, and check out Heir to the Empire.
I'm Tracy Harwood, and I'm academic.
Ricky, grow.
Hi, my name is Phil. Hi, I'm Phil Rice.
Perfect. That's all we need.
All right. I'm Tracy Harwood, and welcome to the And Now for Something Completely Machinima podcast. I'm joined here today by Ricky Grove, who's not going to speak.
No, I've had it. That's it. I'm a grumpy old man sitting in the house watching the kids to make sure they don't hit the corner of the lawn.
Oh, marvelous. Phil Rice.
Yellow.
Yellow. And Damien Valentine.
Hello.
Hi. Right, now, this month we've got some really great picks for you. Made in Unreal, Half-Life 2, No Man's Sky. And we've also got a number of projects that we put on the blog, as well as the tech updates and some more information about the creative AI genies that we've been following. I will put a link to the update that Phil did for us on the Machiniplex channel that he's been working on, and his release also of a special feature about Hugh Hancock's blood spell. Hugh, as you will probably be aware, was the one of the founders of the machinima.com website that became so infamous all those years ago, and Phil's been restoring some of the work that you'll be amazed to see that was put on the .com site before it was taken over by the de Beauvois brothers a few years back. Anyway, yeah, don't hiss. Now, we've got some great picks this month. This week, we're going to cover Ricky's pick. So without any further ado, I'm going to hand straight over to Ricky, and he can tell you about his film.
Sure.
Wait, Tracy, aren't you going to say the title of his film?
Oh, yes.
It's
I can.
UE5 short film. What's
I
the
can.
title?
Do you want me to say it? Do you want?
I want you to say the title. I'm listening closely.
Yeah.
Me too.
It's called Crown.
Oh, I thought it was Hua. Yeah.
Yeah. Crown.
Okay.
An Unreal Engine 5 short film by Motsify, and another film that he's going to share with us called Hunt.
Right.
But I'll let him tell you about it.
Well, that blew up in my face. My goodness. Never try to trick an academic.
Yeah. They got that jujitsu thing that they.
I thought surely the answer would be Huya.
Yes.
Now that I've been as Asianly insensitive as one can possibly be, Ricky.
Yes. Sure. It's funny. One of the most best tools to create machinima nowadays is the Unreal Engine 5, because it covers long time ago. Several big cheeses in the machinima world mentioned some of the requirements for a great machinima tool. One of them was cheap, powerful, easy to use tools, and Unreal Engine is all of that. It's free. You can get access to all kinds of content. It's fairly easy to learn compared to other programs. You'll have a harder time trying to learn, say, 3D Studio Max than you will learning Unreal Engine. The community is huge. Tutorials are all there. So I'm not surprised that there are groups of people who've come together to make short films in Unreal Engine. However, I think one of the things, and this is all preface to talking about why this film is what it is. One of the things that happens is the approach to the machinima filmmaking is not the same as it was when we were all, making films on a regular basis. In last week's film, Phil described the process, Daydream it was called. Phil described the scripting process of setting up the characters and the events all laid out in a map program. Well, there's some similarity in Unreal Engine, but the actual physical work of doing it is very, very different. And the attitude is very, very different. And the people that use it are generally people who are looking at traditional 3D made film content. They're not looking at machinima film content as their way of presenting their stories. And I give that preface because Matsufai, the people that made this great Unreal Engine short, is a Japanese collective who make short films in Unreal Engine 5. And their films are all great, but they're not like traditional machinima. They're more like traditional 3D. I chose two films basically. The second film, Haunt, is my favorite of the works because it is smart. It's a beautiful, almost musical music video. It's fast action. It's quick. It's beautiful to look at. Same thing with the first film. There's a quality in it that is. They're obviously smart filmmakers who want to create things that are exciting and interesting, and I think these films do exactly that. You definitely should visit their website, the Matsufai website, because it has a list of all their films, and they've been creating films for quite a while. But I was very impressed with it because it does one of the things that films that I admire do, which is it inspires me. I go, wow, you can do that? I'd like to do that, but I want to do it in this story. You know what I mean? Really good films, especially in machinima. Machinima history is so much about inspiration. Somebody would come up with a great innovative idea of a great film like Snow Witch that we picked a couple of weeks ago. That film influenced everybody who saw it because they realized that they could take these seemingly commonplace characters in Sims and turn them into these incredibly poetic and beautiful, serious characters as well. So I love both of these films. I like the company that made them. What did you guys think of it?
Do you want me to go next?
Please.
Sure.
Yeah. All right. Motsify Mohua it's actually a Chinese media art team.
Oh, I thought it was Japanese. Excuse me.
There may be something to do with Japanese culture in here, but I don't fully know what it is, if it is. But as I understand it, they've been incubated by an organization or a collective called Motsa, which is this group of 40 media artists and creators who are based in Shenzhen in Guangzhou, who produce incredible and scale digital art exhibitions. And from what I can see, Motsa, which kind of formed in the mid 2010s, this is something to do with them. They're a kind of a recently formed team, although it looks as though they've kind of been quite productive, particularly in terms of their focus on generating these kind of concept shorts using Unreal, of which the two you've picked, I think, are really, really great examples, although I think they're doing very, very different things. Now, I'll start with The Crown. That's the one with the Chinese character that's kind of unpronounceable on YouTube. It's a story of a young, I think, Chinese boy growing up in poverty, seemingly, and whilst one day whilst he's walking through a dump outside the town boundaries, discovers this mask, and it's very reminiscent of the Jim Carrey classic, The Mask. The boy is invited to kind of follow these worshippers who then kind of present him with a sword. And this is where it, for me, mixes perhaps Chinese and Japanese culture a little bit. There's some resonance between those two kind of cultures in the nature of what that story is. Anyway, the boy becomes a revered swordsman, demonstrating these incredible kind of Jackie Chan style moves in front of this completely wowed audience, at the end of which he's presented with a symbol of his mastery, this crown, and then he wakes up and he's back in the dump. So there's your dream that we talked about as being thematic, right, a couple of the films this month. What I liked about it was this kind of patina that was applied over the images. You kind of get a sense of empathy through that mistiness that's generated, and I loved how these three worshippers that this boy is following moved, and the way that the fabric, Damien, on their garments sort of swooshed along as they moved into this public square, and also that kind of movement between the third person and the first person perspective. So the kind of the mask off mask on, so to speak. And also the sound design I thought was really interesting. I also wanted to comment on the use of this kind of gratuitous creature in this film, because I've mentioned this before. We've seen it used in a few films as kind of signifiers, mainly with Unreal Engine films. And to be honest, I don't really know why people do it or what it's all about. But it seems in some of the other films that we've looked at, it's kind of like a little pause or a little demo of technical prowess. But in this film, the creature's a rat. Now, of course, the rat in Chinese culture is a symbol of wisdom, wealth, and prosperity. So the significance of its use here is probably much easier to explain. And kind of looking at this film again, it feels as though there are many kind of hidden messages to those that might be able to understand them. So it's a film about cultural references targeting, I think, a Chinese audience. And what's lovely about it is that the producers have created it to celebrate World Children's Day. So it's positioned as an inspirational story. There is something else I'll mention. Because it kind of rather intrigued me. One of the comments I saw about it was that it reminded them of work by Alberto, is it Mielgo? Now, I don't know if you remember this, but Mielgo directed the Netflix episode of Jabaro in its Love, Death and Robots series, which won an Emmy for the characters design for the work that he did on that, that kind of surreal
witch. I remember that well.
Yeah. So this is what this has been compared to, and it's I think from my point of view, that was one of the most extraordinary and creative things I've seen for years. Hauntingly beautiful, and if you've not seen it, I thoroughly recommend it. And to be honest, I'm not quite sure why that film is compared, or I'm not sure what the comparison is here, except for the fact because it's not got the quality. It's certainly not the quality there. However, I think what aligns here is the mystique that's kind of been created, not least in the way that the movement of the assets is depicted. And for me, there's definitely an element of an uncanny feeling in it. And I think the way it's been achieved is this kind of hybridized 2D, 3D animation style, which is a bit of a Japanese thing, I think. So the movement is, the movement of those kind of worshippers that the character follows is juxtaposed against this kind of 2D scene, which is what I think is making it pop. So The Crown for me is this really great evocative piece of work that overall I think would perhaps benefit from a much more detailed description for us Westerners to help us understand some of the nuances encapsulated in the depictions and their relationship, I think, to Chinese culture. So that's my take on that one. Do you want me to tell you about The Hunt as well whilst I'm going?
Of course. God, your comments are just so brilliant. Thank you.
Welcome.
Phil and I have to follow up on this.
Yeah, well, I thought I'd give you a chance because I've done a little bit of research into the background, so I'm kind of,
I'll say
academic stuff. Hunt's doing something different. I think it's just a concept, kind of cyberpunk style character and lighting, superhero vibes, and a kind of anti-culture, which is kind of why the person's basically being hunted. And I think there's an atmosphere in it that's kind of hard to pinpoint, which is intriguing. But probably that's made visible to us by the tracer beams that you see, which I also think is a really interesting way to lead you through that kind of story, because it's not a very long film, but it really takes you on a
it sure does, yeah,
on a bit of a journey and a thought process. However, what this is a teaser for a course that these guys are developing. And when you go to their website, what they want you to do is sign up to the course. And I assume what they're going to do is put their work out on the various channels for folks to sort of learn a bit more about, most of which are not the usual social channels that we would use, but are in fact Chinese versions. So, think Weibo, Bilibili, the Chinese equivalent of YouTube, and Douyin, the local TikTok, and so on. Those are the channels it's going out on. So again, what you've got here are these creators not aiming for a Western market, which I have to say, I think overall is a real pity, because they're clearly very gifted and have produced some fascinating stories that would definitely, they would benefit from more exposure, I think, from a Western perspective too. And a final comment I will make. Overall, I think what both these films demonstrate, and what the work of these creators is doing, really, is really testament to the to what Unreal have been able to achieve in engaging a breadth of artists from all over the world. It's really to be fully applauded, because over the years, I'm sure you'll remember, we've seen a few machinima films emerging from China, but not that much. And it's always been underground creators who've had to protect their identity for a reason. So what I think is impressive here is that this is a tool set which is clearly legitimizing the creative practices for these digital artists and giving them a chance to catch up on some of the processes that, in the States and in the UK, all over Europe, people that have been doing machinima for years and years have been able to develop over 20 odd years, but the Chinese have just not been able to do it legitimately. And I, for one, certainly look forward to more work coming from Chinese artists like this. So I think it's a really great pick from my perspective for a whole number of reasons, Ricky. Thank you.
Golly, what a wonderful in-depth comments on those films. Really, really exciting and interesting. Phil, did you have something you wanted to share after that masterpiece? Huh? Some stupid little thing like, hey, did you read all those books behind you?
Sorry.
So what struck me, there's a number of things that struck me about, I'm talking about the first film, The Crown. The use of color is just extraordinary. There's such a variety, especially once he gets into kind of the downtown festival area. Just extraordinary use of vibrant color, and yet I didn't know what to call that sheen that's on everything. Patina, I think, is the perfect word for it. Yeah, it adds such an amazing quality to it that really makes it not look like a game engine, which Unreal Engine essentially is, right?
Good point.
And I don't know what that means. It makes it look like, because it gives there's a gradient to its depth in the long shots where you can see far away and stuff. It's just extraordinary. And I would love to know more about how they did that, because that's not a post-production effect.
Oh, you don't think it is? You think did it?
I think it goes too deep into the 3D picture to have been done just in post-production on the video. So I think there's something that they did in the engine. Yeah. But what it is, I'm not going to pretend to know. But yeah, just vibrant color and this sense of unpredictability to the little mini story. I mean, it's a very short film, of course, but I found myself like mesmerized, and I have no idea what's going to happen, to the point where when it came to pass, spoilers, but that this was a young boy's imagination at work, essentially, right? Or at least that's what I was led to believe. That caught me by surprise. I mean, it wasn't like a shock, but I was so engrossed in where it had taken us visually, and like Tracy said, the ways that the characters moved, and that sense of depth, and the beautiful shot selection to give us this real sense of that space that he was in. Yeah. Inspiring is one word, Ricky, and humbling is another for me. It's just, sometimes you see a film that makes you realize, okay, I've been at this a long time. I sure do have a long way to go, because that is, like, I don't even know how they do that, or who thought to even take that approach, knowing that would be the outcome. That's real artistic vision. It's very impressive to me, and it's inspiring, but in a somewhat depressing way. And I'm encouraged by the fact that this is a team, because at least that explains, okay, and me, I'm over here, Geppetto in my shop all by myself. No wonder. So it's just wonderful piece. One thing that's weird about it is the very first hashtag that they chose for this film. Now, without looking, does anyone remember what it is?
Nope.
Did it jump out to anyone else? It's
No.
Cthulhu.
It's what?
Ah,
Oh,
Cthulhu.
Cthulhu.
Yeah, Cthulhu. However you pronounce it, the Lovecraftian demon of, the ultimate evil.
Yeah.
It's actually hashtagged twice in the description of this video, but it's the very first hashtag. And then it's used again. And I'm like, what? Where?
Why?
Why?
Maybe it's just because they like Cthulhu,
Well, who likes Cthulhu?
Everybody loves
So,
Cthulhu.
But isn't that the concept of an immersive environment, an immersive world, a world that's different to your own? It doesn't have to be a horror world. It's another.
Well, no, Cthulhu is an entity. It's a sentient.
It's an old god, the old god from.
And he be angry.
He's pissed off.
He wants to Hulk smash, basically.
Okay.
So yeah, that's what struck me about it, Tracy. It wasn't just a reference to like if you did hashtag noir, something broad that's talking about a sense of atmosphere or a certain feeling or an evocation. This is a actual like sentient, worse than the devil being that basically traditionally wants what he wants is, let's just say, in conflict with what we would want. Is that putting it subtly enough? So
yeah.
anyway,
Yes,
that was just a funny little thing. I'd love to know the story behind that. They didn't do that on the second one. And yeah, this short film Hunt, it didn't grip me as much, I think, because I wanted more story. I think there's more story to tell here, and they probably have more story planned to tell here. But in terms of just visual splendor, again, and in a very different way, oh my God.
Yeah.
Like just the opening shot of this with all the detail of stuff that's on the shelves and counters. When you see that in a real movie and you realize someone dressed that set with all that detail, it's impressive. It's just as impressive to see it in animation like this. Like there's no pattern. It looks random. It looks lived in. Very hard to achieve that. Like that takes a lot of effort to dress a set like that. And for just this quick shot of getting up closer to this character, wonderful. And I love the wide aspect ratio on this. I'm sure it looks absolutely delicious on your widescreen monitor. Just extraordinary. So, impressive. Without the moniker that they'd put on these, I wouldn't have intuitively known these were made by the same team. They look different. I'm not surprised that they are, because they're both at a level of quality that you do believe it's from the same. But in terms of, are they just making more stuff with the same general look? No, this looks like a different art director altogether. Maybe just because it's night, I'm not sure, but yeah, intriguing stuff. I will definitely be checking out their website and seeing what else they're up to, because it's amazing stuff. If nothing else, it's exciting to me that, hey, this is made in tools that I have access to also. Doesn't mean that I could pull it off, but that at least is encouraging.
Yeah.
Like I'm a lot more moved on a personal way by this than I am when I see a Christopher Nolan film. You know what I mean? Like that's an extraordinary experience usually. When one of the big guys, who's Denis Villeneuve or something, who just really Villeneuve. That's impressive, but it's like, okay, they've got $200 million budget.
Yeah.
So what's relatable to me about that?
Yeah.
What way can I knock that off in some cheap? No, this was made with this tools. It's all tools I have access to. Now I just need to find the team of artists and the money to pay them, and then it'll be all set.
I volunteer.
Yeah.
Damien, what did you think?
You guys have said so much. I've got to try and think of something else to say now. I'll start with Hunt, because we were just talking about that, and it kind of gave me that sort of Blade Runner vibe. But the apartment reminded me so much of Deckard's apartment, because it's all messy. I mean, this one is way messier than the one in Blade Runner, and it kind of gives you a tease of this looks really intriguing. There's obviously something happening here. There's more going on. I want to know the rest of it. I want the rest of this story. And I think there was something in the description saying this is a teaser of what we're doing next. So I want to see that. I can't wait for it. I want to know, what's this world? Who is this character? Why are these people trying to kill her? Or I'm assuming they are. How is she going to get out of this situation? Just show me more. I want to know more about it. And I was impressed, like you, Phil, with the amount of detail that was put into this. And there's so many objects in there that they must have a very powerful machine to be able to pull that off as well, because you start feeling, even though Unreal is a powerful
Yeah,
engine
yeah,
and it's designed for games, you put even a small room like that, you fill it up with 3D objects that are obviously quite highly detailed. That's going to slow anything down to a crawl. So they must have some pretty powerful hardware behind it.
yeah, yeah.
I think when you look on their website, you can see that they're proper pro digital artists.
Yeah,
in a state-of-the-art building in Shenzhen. So I don't think kit is an issue here.
That would make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So yeah, I want to see more of Hunt and where that's going. As for Crown, I really enjoyed the story. The idea of this kid just wandering through the slums, he finds this mask, and it inspires his imagination to imagine himself in this much better world, where it's obviously where he really would rather be. But one thing I noticed in that other world is you don't see any faces. Like, he's the only character you actually see his face. Everyone else has got like masks and things on, which I guess kind of goes well with that dream sequence, because
good point.
When you're dreaming, you don't necessarily see other people's faces. Like you may know who that is. If it's a familiar person, you know who it is, but you can't really see their face, and it's kind of got that. And I feel like then this is a film that offers a lot of inspiration to me about things that, what else can I do to improve my craft? And Tracy, you kind of hinted about the fabric, and I've been learning something. I use NVIDIA Omniverse for my films. One of the things I really struggle with is you can't take the soft cloth physics from iClone into Omniverse, and I've been experimenting with different ideas, and they just don't work the way that they should. And watching this gave me an idea that's completely different from anything I've done before, and it almost works. I still need to spend some more time figuring it out. This film may have finally inspired me to solve a problem that's been plaguing me for about a year.
Good. You have to let us know whether you're able to get it fixed or not.
Well, hopefully by next month I'll be able to talk about it.
Okay.
And a blooper's reel.
Yes.
And a blooper's reel, yeah.
I just wanted to point out quickly that one of the things that I've noticed as I've watched many, many films and television series and lots, hundreds of machinima, is that style comes up in a lot of great films. And style is something that isn't really a popular topic in American culture, because it implies a sort of artifice, because Americans in their culture are so obsessed with realism that they don't want to talk about style. They think style is somehow phony, but that's not what style is at all. Style is the particular collection of all of the elements of a scene, like, say, for example, sound, visual look, the way the characters move, the way the story continues and adjusts and changes. All of those come together to create a neat style. So you have a team of artists in Matsify who can create entire projects with their entirely unique style to them. Both of these movies, you pointed out, Phil, you didn't know that the second one was made by the same people, but because they used a different style, a completely different style. And I think that ability to be able to see things in style draws you in so quickly and is much more interesting than the standard traditional methods of creating stories and films that you see all the time, that they don't do anything. They don't pull you in like they should. And that's part of the reason why all of these films we've chosen this month are so really good, is because they all have different styles to them and they all tell a story that is compelling. So I just wanted to make that quick observation at the end here.
No, it's
I'll
really,
add this as well, if you don't mind. One
Sure.
of the things that's really compelling about the style in Crown, the first selection, is if you study it, and this is helpful to pause a frame here and there and just study it, there's almost nothing that is straight and normal, like symmetrical, perfect. Even windows that you would expect to just be rectangles, there's a slight, they're not quite perfect. And it gives this, if there's a pole, it's slightly bent just a little bit one direction. It's not straight up. Doorways, just slightly askew, not quite. That's consistent throughout the whole film. Like most notable in the very final shot of the film where it's overhead and you're seeing the boy that's outside the wall and the city inside the wall. Just look at those buildings. There's not a one of them that are aligned with the other. They're all just slightly askew and not lined up in any kind of grid or pattern or anything like that. And I think that has an effect, even if you aren't paying specific attention to those details. It comes through as that sense of style of this is just, I think that may be more than anything why I would be hard pressed in a lineup to pick this film out as one that was made in a video game engine, because what are video game engines known for mostly? Is grids and blocks and crates and straight lines, and because that's easy. To do stuff like this where it's not primitive shapes, it's modified shapes, that requires a lot more work and a lot more craft and the thought to even do it.
Yeah, the imagination involved.
You buy a prop from the Realusion store and drag it onto your scene and there's the pillar. No, nobody ever did that here. Everything's a little off.
Yep.
And it works.
Yeah.
So the only other comment that I'll make, and I'll ask you guys' opinion on, is at the very end, the first time I watched it, when it panned out to show the boy was outside what turns out to be this walled city, that struck me as all of a sudden I started questioning whether or not I knew as much as I assumed about the setting of this story, because where are there walled cities right now anywhere in the world? That's an old tradition, or it's one that you see sometimes in future sci-fi where the outside world has gotten so dirty that the elites are going to wall themselves off into domed cities or that type of thing. So all of a sudden I got that vibe off of this in a sense of larger story. Did that strike anyone else, or was that just me?
I got that.
No,
feeling.
The oddity of that wall.
I felt the same way. I saw it as the science fiction trope. And given the fact that so much of it is in China, the political element of that too is pretty clear to me.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there, I think. Okay, good. I'm glad I didn't just miss something there. That's a really interesting device.
I kind of got the feeling that there was such a depth of metaphor and hidden messages running right the way through it. I have no clue what all of those messages are. I could only unpick a couple of them.
Sure.
And only then by digging around a little bit to sort of tease it out. But
it was interesting, the wall being so prominent in that shot, for that to be the first time that was really revealed.
Yeah.
That was that separation. So yeah, I feel like something was being said there, and
yes, probably
either way you go with it, the sci-fi trope way or the political commentary, or both.
Or
it's wonderful.
The discussion about youth and inclusion.
Yeah.
Which is a big thing also in China as well. So lots of depth to it. Absolutely beautiful.
What it made me think of was a film that we talked about a few months ago that was it was a future noir sci-fi thing, and the plants had become the commodity that the elites controlled. And remember how we kind of gave that movie a bit of I gave that movie a bit of a hard time for being so on the nose with its messaging. And I feel like this is, if I could go back in time to when we were talking about that movie and have a movie to point to say, this is how you do it, this is what I would point to. Like, this is really interesting messaging, because, and especially if it's being done in a place where, let's say, your speech isn't quite so free, there's nothing you can really point to in this and say that it's subversive, right? It's
Right.
not someone tearing apart a flag of a nation or spray painting or throwing a shoe at the picture of some leader. There's none of that. And yet the message is there, and it's profound. And even if I'm not the target of the message, so I'm probably missing a lot of it, but I see that it's there, and it's really amazing, really impressive.
That's
so
a good-
I can't say
good
enough about this
point.
film.
That's a good point. Very, very good point.
Well, what a great discussion we've had on
Yeah.
two of your films this week, Ricky, The Crown and Hunt by Motsify. We'll put all the links on the usual website post, and some of the links also to the other references that we've just been talking about. That's it for this week. I'm Tracy Harwood. We've been here today with Ricky Grove, with Phil Rice and Damien Valentine. And don't forget, you can catch up with us on I'll get this right one day. Talk at Machinima. No, I won't get it right. Talk at completelymachinima.com.
There you go.
And the website completelymachinima.com. And that's it. Thanks very much.
That's
Bye for
it.
now.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Right.